really only invest in a device that really kind of fills a gap within your practice. Oftentimes we have FOMO, what I like to call, when the latest and, newest device is out there and everyone's kind of rushing to get it.
What a lot of people don't understand is when you do a superficial depth that some people see as more conservative, you're actually stacking all of that energy and all of that trauma right in the top of the skin that we then hit again with that laser or that peel. So in some people, we can create, I've actually seen skin bubble.
Welcome to the Business of Aesthetics Expert Panel webinar. This empowering discussion will help you navigate challenges, leverage opportunities, and build a thriving career in aesthetics. Thank you for joining us and our panel of renowned industry leaders as they share actionable strategies, best practices, and certainly valuable insights to tackle the unique leadership challenges faced by aesthetic professionals today. Welcome to our panelists for this webinar, Gina Graziano and Dr. Hardik Soni. It is a pleasure to have both of you with us. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
So today, with our Business of Aesthetics Expert Panel webinar, we're going to be discussing Tech and Tools Showcase, CoolSculpting, RF, ultrasound, and laser trends. Now, if you're in the business, you know exactly what all those terms mean, and we're going to be able to unpack that a little further. If you're new to the business and that something there is new, that's awesome. We're going to be able to bring you to another level of understanding. And before we do that, though, and dive in, I do want to ask you this. When potential patients in your area search for treatments you offer, does your practice actually show up, or are they finding your competitors instead? This is a major challenge for many aesthetic practice owners. You might be offering amazing services, but if you're not visible online, you're missing out on a steady stream of new patients. The good news, and there is good news, there's a fix. With the right digital marketing strategy, covering local SEO, targeted ads, and funnel-based content marketing, you can not only attract more inquiries, but convert them into actual patients walking through your doors. And here's the best part. If you stick around to the end of our webinar, I have something for you, something very special for you that you're going to want to take advantage of. Something that can help take your practice's online presence to the new level. So keep that in mind, and I hope that you will stay with us. But let me go ahead and just introduce all of us for tonight, and then we will get started. I'll introduce myself first of all as the mediator, I am a mediator, but as the facilitator of tonight. I'm a leadership coach, professional mediator, and facilitator, passionate about helping set leaders and their teams up for success that matters. I help them lead themselves well so they can lead others well. My focus is on communication, conflict, and change, and my team and I at Capstone Coaching help unlock and engage the full potential of an organization and its people. Our first panelist tonight is Gina Graziano. Gina is an accomplished aesthetic sales consultant and industry advisor with a proven track record of driving growth and innovation in the medical aesthetic space. Currently serving as Director of Marketing Sales at Alpha Blue US, Gina has earned recognition as a President's Club winner and Area Sales Manager of the Year. Congratulations, Gina. With deep expertise in medical and aesthetic sales, she is passionate about helping practices adopt cutting-edge technologies while achieving strong ROI. Armed with an MBA and years of leadership experience, Gina is committed to empowering providers and advancing excellence across the aesthetics industry. I think we have a great panelist here with us tonight to help us with this mission that we are on. Our second panelist tonight is Dr. Hardik Soni. Dr. Hardik is the founder and medical director of Ethos Aesthetics and Wellness and specializes in minimally and non-invasive cosmetic procedures, including Botox, dermal fillers, laser treatments, and chemical peels. A platinum-level injector with allergen, he has performed over 15,000 treatments and is highly experienced across multiple laser platforms. With training in both emergency and aesthetic medicine and over a decade of experience, Dr. Hardik takes a conservative, patient-first approach. He emphasizes education, transparent discussions about outcomes, costs, and risks, and avoids high pressure tactics, ensuring clients feel comfortable and informed in choosing the treatment that best suits their needs. Great to have you. And again, the two of you complement each other. I'm so looking forward to hearing what you have to share with us tonight. Thank you for being with us, Dr. Ardick. And you'll see now on your screen the points for tonight's webinar that I'm confident we'll be able to deliver to you and provide you with an amazing and very insightful webinar. Now, I do want to, we have some great questions lined up for the panelists that have come from registrants, but I do want to encourage you, this is a live event, so if you'd like to put a question to one of the panelists or both of them, you can go ahead and do that in the chat or the Q&A. We'll be monitoring that. And if you have a question, I'll make a point of making sure we get it back and around to one of the panelists to respond to it. You can also throw in a comments or a thumbs up, whatever you feel like. The more interactive we find, the better. So I'll leave that up to you. But if for some reason we get a question late in the webinar and we can't put it up to the panelists, we will make sure, Whitney, our webinar manager, will make sure that the question is captured. We circle back around to the panelists, get an answer, and get it back to you. So nothing hits the floor, everything gets answered. So having said all of that, let's go ahead and get into the questions. And I'm going to lead off with the first questions for you, Gina.
Sure.
And from your perspective in sales and advising practices, what do you see as the most exciting advancements in RF microneedling, ultrasound, and laser technology for 2025? And how are these innovations changing both patient experience and provider outcomes? That's a big question.
That is a big question. It's funny because I get asked a lot about advancements in technology because we're kind of programmed to think that lasers update and modernize and modify themselves every single year. But the truth is, a lot of these laser wavelengths, at least, have been tried and true for years. And we do things like add little bells and whistles to make cooling more efficient or to make it less painful or to control the downtime. But a lot of times the technologies themselves are predecessor technologies that have been around 10, 15, even 20 years sometimes. So I think it's a double-edged question. There are some new brands we see coming into the market that are in these spaces. Not that I think a lot of the technology is really unique and different. It's a different way to package what we already have. But the one caveat to that would be I am seeing a lot of technologies coming from Asia that have a lot of infusion capabilities. And that to me is a really exciting trend for the upcoming year. One of my roles at Alpha Blue Medical, I run a sales team and we sell regenerative products. So exosomes, salmon sperm, polynucleotides, all these great new regenerative products coming from Korea and Asia. And so we do see more modalities allowing for infusion of those types of serums into the skin at the same time that the device is firing. And as a whole, we're seeing a trend towards more holistic options and towards skin boosters. So that's a trend I'm very bullish on. That's why, my other part of my role is advising those types of companies because I do believe that they're the future. And so when I talk to my practices about the end of 2025 and 2026, it's not always about buying a new tech, but it's how do we take that old tech, add infusion capabilities to it, and make it a brand new treatment to resell to your patients. So that's really where I'm focused. I do see some high frequency and some ultrasound coming through from Korea. That's where I have a direct line through Alpha Blue Medical. So HIFU or high frequency and ultrasound combinations. We've had all therapy for years, but you see an advent of soft wave. There's some new ZERF from Lutronic. There's some new devices that are coming out that are using those ultrasound and HIFU in new and exciting ways. It's all focused on skin tightening, which I think is the holy grail, of devices. It's the number one most requested treatment after hair removal in the space. So I think anything new that can address skin tightening in the advent of a time where we're on GLP-1s and weight loss medications, where we might need more skin tightening and skin retraction than usual. That's an exciting new development in that space for me. I would also say the resurgence of some of the more aggressive lasers. So before COVID, we were seeing this big push towards minimally invasive or non-invasive lasers and treatment. So a move away from surgery or anything with major downtime. And then people went through COVID, started working from home, and we can look like, a chia pet while we're recovering from hair restoration, or like be home kind of hiding the rest of ourselves a little bit easier now. So we've actually seen a return to some of the more aggressive treatments, and that's surgeries, that's hair transplants, and that is more aggressive lasers, what I'll call, fractional ablative or non-ablative, all the way through to CO2. So I do believe a return to those more aggressive, um, more one and done type treatments with more downtime, but longer lasting and a more impactful result, I think are going to be the trend for the next year as well.
Well, Gina has just taken the fire hose, plugged it in, and just loaded down on us. Thank you, Gina. That is awesome. So I want to
Sure.
just remind our listeners and our viewers, this is recorded, and you'll be able to go ahead and go ahead and listen to this again or watch it again, depending what platform you're using, and be able to capture this. And I just want to encourage you, because I can tell Dr. Hardick is going to be very similar in terms of just providing all this insight. Remember, you don't have to capture it all, but capture something that captures you. That makes sense. Just what is it you've come on this? What are you passionate? What are you looking for? And if you hear something, write it down. Make note of that. Try and capture that. You're going to be able to reach out and connect back with Gina or Dr. Hardick, so you'll have access to them as well post the event. But I just want you to try that. I think sometimes we get in these and there's just always so much good stuff. But where do you start? Where do you grab? So just break it down so you can enjoy it. Write it down. My goodness, don't try and remember it. If you're like me, that plan never really pans out well. So, Gina, thank you for kicking this off so well.
Of course, my pleasure.
Uh, Dr. Hardick, second question I have is for you, which is, with so many new devices entering the market each year, or variations thereof, how do you reassure patients about safety and long-term results, especially when they may be hesitant about the quote unquote the latest technology, kind of leaning a bit into what Gina's talking about?
Well, I'm going to echo what Gina already mentioned. Sometimes the latest technology is really kind of technology that has been around, that has been either enhanced or augmented. And I think it's very important that as practitioners in this field, you really have to familiarize yourself with concepts such as energy-based devices and laser physics. Once you understand that, I think it really kind of gives you a window onto what these devices truly do. The first thing you have to do is prioritize whether these devices are FDA cleared or not, slash approved, because we're seeing a lot of devices start to make their way into mainstream, and not all of them have the pedigree and the research behind it. So make sure the devices are FDA cleared, but I think that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg. What people have to remember is that FDA clearance simply means that the FDA has deemed that these devices are safe to use. It doesn't always speak to the efficacy of these devices. So I think you really have to do your due diligence and ask for any research utilizing these devices. And it's very difficult to ferret out how good a device is based on what the company is telling you, because obviously there is going to be somewhat of a bias. A lot of times, because these devices are being put onto the market by these different manufacturers, the research that surrounds them is also often biased. So I think that's the first part. You have to kind of do your due diligence. At a minimum, make sure they're FDA cleared. Number two, you had to kind of reassure the patients about long-term outcomes, not just short-term marketing claims from these kind of devices. Lastly, you have to kind of have experience with these devices. How can you convince your patients that something is great unless you've really experienced using the device yourself, right? And it really takes a little bit of time to kind of get familiar with the device unless you've been kind of in this field for a while. You intuitively know the concept of laser physics that allow you to kind of just get a device and kind of get off to the races with it. And so it's you have to balance innovation with responsibility, number one. Number two, the technology must support, not replace clinical expertise, and lastly, you should really only invest in a device that really kind of fills a gap within your practice. Oftentimes we have FOMO, what I like to call, when the latest and newest devices out there, and everyone's kind of rushing to get it. And part of it, and Gina knows this better than anyone, having been involved
I'm laughing over here.
in some amazing companies, that their marketing was so amazing that people just had to have those devices. Concepts like radio frequency are not novel. They've been around for quite some time. And without mentioning any specific names, some companies have done a great job. I will mention one name. One laser I was one of the first to buy was the Pico Shore. Now, this was, in my opinion, one of the first true advancements in kind of laser technology, because here we had access to kind of the picosecond, pulse duration, which is measured in trillionths of a second. And in retrospect, yeah, amazing advancement. They did a fantastic job of selling the devices, but as we know that sometimes these devices are a little bit underwhelming when you get them. And sometimes it comes with experience. Sometimes you buy the device and they turn out not to be what you expect. And again, as you spend more and more time in this industry, you get better and better at gauging not only if a technology is the right fit, but whether your patients are truly going to benefit from it.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Hardick. A couple things jump out at me, that idea of filling a gap. We've heard in different webinars that often people jump, as you say, jump at the greatest, latest, newest technology, grab it, and then it sits in a box, or it never gets to the floor, it never gets integrated. And that, of course, that's not a good use of cash flow. But the reality of that is, it's kind of what you're saying. If you don't know what the gap is you're filling, then that's where those kind of things happen. And then all of a sudden priorities take over, and we don't have time to get it out of the box. But if we know what the gap is, and I love the way you put that. And I think one of the questions it just seems to me, I don't know if this makes sense to you guys, but if I was looking at buying something, I'd be going and trying to figure out who else is already using it, and reaching out to them and finding out what their experience has been, and finding out how the application has been for them in terms of the gap that you're looking at filling versus what they're doing. Does that make sense?
For sure. When you ask your reps, they're going to give you a list of their 10 happiest accounts to call. So it's actually something that you have to do for yourself. Find a competitor or find somebody whose opinion that you trust and ask them directly. Or that's sales. That's any company who's ever sold anything in the world. They're going to put their best references forward, right? We do that on our resumes too. I'm not going to give you someone who tells you I didn't do a good job for them, right? So we have to take that with a grain of salt. But yeah, I think the instinct is good.
Yeah, I I and I agree. Absolutely. That's the low hanging fruit today with the tech, with AI. It probably could do some interesting analysis and figure out who else has one that's not on that list,
Mhm.
and be able to ascertain that there's somebody, another player that might not be the top one of the top 10, but absolutely. But it's great. It's just so critical to do that due diligence. Gina, I got another question for you, and it's regarding evaluating new devices. So when you are evaluating new devices, what key factors should med spa owners and providers prioritize, such as downtime, ROI, patient demand, or manufacturer support? That's a big one, to ensure they're making the right investment for their practice. Kind of builds on, again, what we've just been talking about.
For sure. All of these things are super important as step two, but I find a lot of my practices miss step one, which is evaluating your practice and your patient base as a starting point for the technology. So the ROI could look amazing. The company could be super supportive. They could give you dollars for marketing. They could train you and your staff in perpetuity. Could be a company with a fantastic reputation, and you could get it for a great price. But if you have a skin type 5 and 6 practice and that device is an IPL, it doesn't matter. None of it matters, right? It's not going to fit your patient base. So when I instruct my clients and when I do private, I do equipment negotiation and evaluation for my clients. I start with first identifying the patient base within the practice. So, skin type analysis, are we seeing darker patients who I'm going to have to be a little bit more selective about my lasers, or do I have skin types 1, 2, and 3 who can kind of take a little bit more technology? The age group of my patients, do I need something light and that I can add onto a facial, or do I have people that are in rejuvenation or correction phases instead of those preventative phases, right? That's going to kind of guide me in my search for what type of device or what type of technology to bring in. Um, Also, how much money do you have to spend? Does your providers, do they have the ability to do an advanced laser, or do they have the credentialing to do an advanced laser by the laws of your state? Right? How does it pair with your current mix? Do I have facials and microneedling pen, and now I'm going all the way to a fully ablative CO2 where I kind of rip someone's face off? Like there has to be steps in between, right? It's got to make sense for who's in your office, what they're spending, what they're asking for, and what we can really treat them with. And then, yes, everything that you mentioned is nail on the head. Phase 2 is going to be, what's the ROI on the device? Most importantly, right? Does it work? Can it make me money? Those are the two questions. So we want to make sure the ROI makes sense, that the company isn't a fly-by-night company and it's going to be there to support you and support your consumables. It's helpful when there's a bit of recognition in the market, but you don't have to go brand name. You know, people know microneedling, but they don't necessarily know all of the different microneedling pens. People know hair removal, but not necessarily all the different devices. So as long as the general category makes sense in your practice, I think the rest can be solved with marketing, really strong consultations. And I run a training called the Art of a Consultation. That's my most popular training, is just really get your people speaking about it and converting. So that's the other side. Your business has to be set up to generate the lead, receive the lead, convert the lead, insert any device or any treatment in the office. If they're not set up to do that, then spending on a huge device is going to be for nothing.
Thank you, Gina. Again, uh, it's this idea. I think the common denominator I'm hearing so far is um, due diligence is not emotional diligence. We don't get caught up in the moment in the marketing. We get focused
Yes,
on the education, understanding, and research that's necessary to support a healthy bottom line and healthy patients, obviously. So I I just thought I think that emotional that's what people do. That's exactly what they
mhm,
do.
for
Next
sure.
question's for you, Dr. Hardick. And as I said in your bio, you take a conservative patient first approach. Uh, how does that influence your decision making regarding the adoption or offering of advanced technologies like CoolSculpting, RF, or lasers?
I think at the end of the day, you have to be able to build a good rapport with your patients, number one. Number two, you really have to understand as a practice, what a majority of your patients really want. Number three, you really have to focus on concepts such as efficacy, safety, comfort levels. And, these are all the things I kind of look at before, adopting advanced technologies. Things like cold sculpting, RF, and lasers, fortunately have been around for a while now. I was one of the first practices to get cold sculpting. They've gone through several different iterations in their machines, and they've gotten better. RF has been around for a while, and lasers have been around for over 3 decades now. So sometimes you just have to decide what kind of the best tool is going to be. It doesn't have to be, the most advanced technology. I built my practice when I first started 20 years ago on a laser that was already 10 years old at that time.
Hmm.
And Gina may remember this, but it was a laser called the Gentle Laser,
Mhm.
Candela. And the older machines from the late 90s, early 2000s were the size of small refrigerators, and I bought it on the secondary market um, for probably, a third of the price, and that generated the greatest amount of revenues for me. So, being conservative is a very good thing, but people also want to see results. And I think, to really kind of bring in the right technology, you really have to understand the history of these devices, what's out there, and what's truly significant innovation. For someone who's starting out a new practice, my simple piece of advice to you would be start out with things that don't require a huge capital outlay. Start with things where you don't have to put a lot of money up front, things like injectables, things like microneedling pen, maybe things like PRP, things like chemical peels. These are things that don't require hundreds of thousands of dollars to start. Secondly, if you are thinking of bringing devices in, think about devices that don't have any kind of consumable costs associated with it, number one. And also think about looking into the secondary market. In my opinion, the secondary market for these types of devices is probably just as big, if not bigger, as kind of primary market. So it's an amazing opportunity to actually bring in kind of some newer technologies. And unfortunately, in our field, we're also seeing a lot of practices close down now after about a year, year and a half. And I'll give one kind of final example. I was able to buy the M-Sculpt Neo. I remember at its peak, these devices were going for 200, $300,000, on the secondary market, basically brand new. You can get them for now 50, 60,000. So I think you just have to be judicious. I think you have to ramp up in bringing technology, and I think you have to think even more before bringing in the latest and the greatest technology. At the end of the day, people are coming to you because you're the expert. And I truly believe that all these devices are just tools. You can give someone the most advanced piece of equipment, and they may not be able to get the same results as someone with a laser that's 20 years old, that truly understands the concept of laser physics. You may not be able to produce results as someone who's able to blend different modalities together to truly deliver an outstanding result. So I would like to just caution some of our listeners that you don't have to go after kind of the most advanced piece of equipment. Do what's right for your patient. Do what feels comfortable. Take your time and don't let the fear of missing out cloud your judgment when it comes to, bringing in some of these technological innovations. And I think we're going to see more and more technology come out, but most of them, in my opinion, and I think as Gina mentioned before, they're kind of, enhanced versions of what we already have. To see truly innovative technology, I can't really point to it right now.
Thank you, Dr. Hardick. And I think that there's an old marketing saying. I came out of the hospitality industry, and they said, you have a choice. You can either take a rifle approach or a shotgun approach. Shotgun, you just kind of shoot at the thing and see what you hit, and it's very random. It's in the area, but there's no guarantee. It's good for taking geese down out of the sky, but a rifle is you have to aim it. You have to know how to use it. You have to be prepared. You have to, and I think that's what I'm hearing you say is that taking a rifle approach, and the rifle approach isn't being driven by the technology, but driven by the relationship with your patient in terms of what their needs, desires, and concerns are, and responding to those, recognizing that you can't do everything for everyone. But as you point out, they came to see you. There was words that jumped to mind for me in this community. It's experience, it's trust, it's responsibility. That's the stuff. That's the superpower of an aesthetics practice that clients want what you have. And so I just love the way the caution, doctor. Thank you for that. Gene, next question I have is for you. And many providers are layering treatments. Just I think what Dr. Hardick was just talking about in terms of some of the modalities, but layering treatments like RF with lasers or body contouring with skin tightening. What best practices have you seen for combining modalities effectively while avoiding over treatment or patient fatigue? I'm intrigued about this patient fatigue.
Hmm. Well, look, there's always ways we can combine treatments together to get better outcomes when they're the appropriate treatments. And it piggybacks kind of on what Dr. Soni just said. If you don't know how to use the tools in your office, I don't really understand what's happening to the tissue when you're using these tools. This is where we run into problems combining modalities, right? So, for example, I know a lot of people like to microneedle or use radio frequency microneedling with a superficial modality on top, like a laser, and I've even seen a peel on top of that as well, right? What a lot of people don't understand is when you do a superficial depth that some people see as more conservative, you're actually stacking all of that energy and all of that trauma right in the top of the skin that we then hit again with that laser or that peel. So in some people, we can create like I've actually seen skin bubble right away, too much heat trapped in that dermis. I've seen people have allergic reactions, numbing cream plus heat plus, some sort of chemical peel or additional heat at the end. I've seen hyperpigmentation like crazy, or I've seen people do things in the wrong order. So generally, we start deepest depth first and then finish more superficial. I've seen people do the opposite way and think, well, I'm stacking treatments, but we've now created all of this redness and erythema and trauma in that top layer of the skin. So we see a lot now, and I'm going to lean back on Korea just because that's where so much of my experience over this past year has been. In Korea, you can go to a spot and get 12 different lasers in a day, and you're there for 8 hours, and then they throw you in a hyperbaric chamber, and you heal and you go home. But I'll tell you that those doctors understand the order in which we do those devices. They're also working with a more homogenous patient base of lighter skinned people than we have here in the United States. So we can't always plug and play everything from every country. It's got to fit the people in your chair. And so, yes, we are not afraid to stack anymore, which is a double-edged sword. For the people that are doing it right, it's beautiful to be able to have one treatment and affect deeper fat, deeper skin tightening, and superficial texture and color. Yet that patient, if it works well, is going to leave so thrilled. And that's going to result in patient loyalty and referrals and great before and after photos that you can use for your marketing. And it is the way of the future, but it's got to be done in a way where the provider is respecting the technology, respecting the patient that's in their chair, and fully understanding what's going on in that treatment, so that we don't have adverse events. Another way that we stack, and I'm going to go back to my skin boosters, and I'm really bullish on boosters and peptides and exosomes and all of this is this next wave that offers a way to stack additional treatments without necessarily stacking energy. So if you are looking for a little extra for tonality or for healing or for acne, you can use a lot of these topicals now and achieve, combination effects, maybe in a less experienced provider base. So that's where I direct a lot of my newer practices to go rather than experimenting with that much energy.
Thank you, Gina. I think I just want to kind of throw something back up to Dr. Hendrick. He said in his bio he's done over 15,000 treatments. And the first few he did were not complicated with all this
Mhm.
stacking, I'm sure. I don't know how many
Mhm.
weren't, but his journey was, I'm sure, very progressive and structural, and it was timely, and it was patient, as he said, and using his words, right? They very much patient first approach. So I think that's a really important term. And you're pointing out, like I had the privilege of driving the pace car at the Talladega Speedway a few years back, and the first lap I did, they're literally going to take me off because you're going too slow. I said, well, I'm not ready to go 240 miles an hour yet, and it took me a few laps, but once I got up, I didn't want to slow down. I loved it. But I had to learn of just some few fundamentals on angles and where the track was and to the point I had to understand where the energy of the car wanted to go and where I needed to track it. And I share that just because I think we all love to just go, and of course that's the thing is market the marketing strategies today are all about we need everything now, just in time. Everything's now, 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 now. And what I'm hearing you guys saying is, no, what we need is what is best situated, and using your term, Dr. Hardick, that's patient first mindset with a due diligence process that protects the integrity of both the practice, the patient, the team, and the bottom line. That makes that's kind of,
Totally.
and that goes against a lot of the marketing strategies that probably line up to this equipment. So I totally
Well, to that effect, I mean, think about your patient on that racetrack. Same deal, also, right? And if it's the first experience they've had with a treatment or the first experience they've had with your practice, they don't want to go a million miles an hour either. So, like, we have to have some sort of intelligence here to say, okay, is this safe? Is this appropriate? Is the patient comfortable? Is everyone here really on board and ready to do this? And you have to make sure that your protocols are in place, your adverse event, protocols and flow is in place, and that you're able to handle that patient and care for that patient.
yeah,
So it's important that everybody goes the speed that is appropriate and comfortable for whoever's driving, for sure.
exactly. Yes, we've got a whole new analogy we're going to use. By the way, I asked if I could drive Mike. It was back in the days when Mike Skinner, and I asked him if I could take his car around for a spin, and they said no. But
Sure.
I thought that was just a little short-sighted of them. But Dr. Hardick, next question I have is for you. So since you're obviously very highly experienced in both injectables and energy-based devices, how do you determine when to recommend a device treatment versus injectables, or when a combination is best for the patient? I think we're kind of, we've unpacked it. Now we're saying, so we've got somebody there. Now we need to think about what we can and what is realistic for us to offer and to do.
Yeah, I think, the decision to use monotherapy versus a, multimodal approach is really dependent on the patients themselves. It has to be pretty individualized based on what their goals are, what their anatomy or inherent characteristics are. As Gina was mentioning before, someone who's a darker Fitzpatrick, you're unlikely to do a pretty aggressive ablative treatment. And so you have to be mindful of that as well. And lastly, you have to be mindful of what their lifestyle is. Is this a mother that has to pick up the kids, in the car line every day? Or is this someone who can tolerate a lot of downtime? So I think you'll have to look at patient goals, anatomy, and lifestyle when you come up with what types of procedures you're going to do. As we all know, things like dermal fillers really are used when you're trying to either enhance kind of facial features, or you're trying to restore some of the loss of the features from signs of aging. Devices are best used to address kind of the superficial nature of the skin as well as tightening of the skin. Combination procedures are often ideal for the patients because when deployed properly, they really give kind of the best outcomes. But again, you have to ascertain what your patient's capable of. Another thing you have to ask about is what's their budget, you know? And this kind of goes back to, something you mentioned before about fatigue and filler fatigue. So I think what we're seeing now more than ever, and why Gina is so bullish on some of these restorative and regenerative procedures, is that I think when, used appropriately and deployed at the right period of time, that they can really kind of hopefully slow down or at least prevent a lot of the downstream effects. We're also seeing patients opt for devices a little bit more, whether they're things like microneedling, laser-based treatments, because typically while the results may take a little bit longer, the results can also last a little bit longer. And I think there's a backlash that's going on in the entire aesthetic community, especially with things like dermal fillers and injectables, that overdone face. Our practice has never really kind of believed in doing work like that. So for us, our filler practice is busier than ever because we've always been very conservative. But even so, people get tired of maybe having to come in because we are conservative, maybe every 6 to 9 months for some of these injectables. So we're really seeing more of an adoption to some of these energy-based devices. And I think at the end of the day, and the most important part is I don't really care necessarily what other practices are doing, what the overall sentiment is. People come to me because I'm the expert. If I feel that fillers are best suited, in clients that I have known for a while now, nearly 2 decades in doing this, if I tell them they need fillers, they're going to get fillers. Now, if I get a new patient coming in that's coming in under kind of the, this black cloud of the negative connotations associated with these injectables, I tell them that they could benefit from fillers, but I also don't try to push the issue because I haven't gained their trust yet. So for someone like that, I may be more inclined to do more regenerative therapeutics. They may not be interested in dermal fillers, but maybe they'll think about biostimulators. Maybe they'll think about topical exosomes. Maybe they'll think about just regular microneedling with
Mhm.
exosomes. You have to get small gains first with your patients to really kind of be able to lead them to the promised land. And at the end of the day, ultimately, you do have to deliver results, but set a realistic timeline for them, set a realistic time frame for them. The closer you can get to outlining what their journey is going to look like, and the closer you can get to actually achieving those results, the higher in esteem you're going to be placed, and that patient becomes a patient for life at that point. So this is a very emotional, everyone comes to you for a reason. No one's coming for Botox or fillers or lasers. They're coming because they have a reunion coming up. They're coming because for the first time they looked in the mirror and they don't look like how they feel on the inside. And if you can ascertain what the real reason is, then you've really unlocked a potential to really lead them down an entire treatment plan. And you have to just feel each patient out. And that is very individualized. Most successful people are the ones who really understand their patients.
Beautifully put, Dr. Hardick. Yeah, I remember hearing a, a doctor saying he had a patient and she looked in the mirror and she says, I don't recognize the person in the mirror. I think versus she didn't look in the mirror and say, oh, I'm thinking I'd like an overdone face.
Yeah.
So I think that's that. Where does the responsibility lie? The words we've been using here: responsibility, trust, experience, sensitivity, conservative. They all blend together to respond to what you've just shared. Thank you, Doctor. Gina, the next question I have is for you. And even the best technology won't succeed without patients filling the chair. Very true. What marketing strategies, like before and after photos, educational content, or in-office demos, do you find work best for driving utilization and patient demand?
So I'll say marketing is a slippery subject, right? And it changes all the time. And what works this month may not work next month. And what works in New York City is not going to work in Kentucky, and et cetera. I do think there are a few tried and true ways that you can advertise your practice, but they have to be rooted in authenticity. And I can't stress that enough. So I can tell people to make educational content, right? That demystifies the science and helps really break down terms so your patients know what you have. But if you're not an educational provider, if you're that's not who you are as a person, it's not going to translate. It's going to be weird, it's going to be inauthentic. And when they come into the office, that's not going to be their experience. So if we walk into your med spa and you guys are partying all day and you're running around dancing, then that should be your marketing content. You should be attracting the people that want people like you to treat them, right? And these big doctors, these big practices that have a huge following, what they do the best is they are authentically themselves. They are showing them in situations interacting with their staff. They're talking about a disgruntled patient. They're joking with their patients, right? It's an experience, and you get to see what it's like to be in their practice. So no matter what, that has to be at the center of it. Whoever your providers are, they have to, who you see is who you need to get when you walk in the door. It can't be different. And that really brings it back to branding, understanding your brand. When I first meet with a lot of my consulting clients, I ask that, why do people come to you? Or what makes you guys different? What's your brand story? What's your ethos? And half the time people don't know how to answer that. And if you can't answer that as the provider, the owner of the practice, then how is anybody going to know how to feel about your brand or your practice, right? So the fact that you have a board certified doctor, unfortunately, is not an ethos, right? Because you have the latest and greatest technology, that is not branding. Branding is how you make people feel. It's outcomes, it's experiences, it's what's going to happen when we walk into your practice. So the way that we show that is videos of interacting with your patients, with your staff, and with your providers. It's really, really solid and standard before and after photos, which means same lighting, same room, same angle, ideally same clothing or same headband or same background, right? Very standardized photos. We know, and people are hyper aware now with AI and all of our photo editing apps, that make us look like we're snatched at all times. We know that it's very, very easy to modify photos and make them look real. So there's a bit of patient distrust with some of those photos. So I find video content with a really great patient who's super happy with their results, and then their photos, like showing the progress, being open and honest about how long it took to get there, maybe talking about all the different modalities it took to get there, and then having a video like endorsement, I find, is replacing some of the standard before and after photos, although there's always a place for before and after photos, as long as they're very standard. Um, I would also say all of my providers should be focused on, I call it storytelling, but that's what it is. The patient journey, sharing the story of what it's like to be in your practice or be a patient of your practice. And so again, I'm going to say sell outcomes, sell experiences, don't sell treatments in your advertisements, outcomes and experiences only. Uh, and if you're trying to attract people of a certain demographic, like it's common sense, but show what your ideal people would be getting in your practice. Don't advertise for things that you don't want to attract. Don't advertise that you're doing $10 Botox and then complain to me that your patients aren't paying more for Botox. Well, we're not putting out what we want to attract, right? So I think people are really anxious to get butts in seats, and I understand that, of course, but it's got to be the right butts. It's got to be the people that align with your brand, that align with the technologies that you have, that align with like the scope of your practice and all of your providers and the personalities within your practice. And so you have to advertise for what you want. And a right patient is going to be much better for the practice long term than three people that are coming in for your $11 toxin.
Thank you, Gina. Again, the fire hose. Thank you. I always look at brand in my realm. We focus on that a lot. We talk about brand isn't about what we do and how we do it. It's about who we are and why we matter. And it's that the essence of a relationship to that sets the tone of what is attractive. And we focus on the storytelling with the love story. I've noticed in
Mm.
America, I'm from Canada, that because hospitals are for-profit businesses, I've noticed a lot of the medical doctors and their love stories where they're, but Dr. Bob, he just was there when I needed him. He just had all the right answer at the right time. There's clearly a reason they're doing that. And so there's a reason for us to be able to build on that as well. Dr. Hart, next question for you is, minimally invasive procedures can deliver subtle, gradual results. What approaches have you found most effective in setting realistic expectations with patients seeking quick transformations from devices? Our term quick is probably a little suspect, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, if I'd like to tell people that if someone has unrealistic expectations, whether you have the technology capable of delivering those results or not, part of the consultation process, you have to really ascertain whether this is going to be a good fit, not only you for the patient, but the patient for the practice. And oftentimes I see a lot of people that have gone to multiple other places and they have nothing but bad things to say about those other places. To me, that's a red flag. I try not to take on patients like that. And it's very difficult when you're first starting out. I've made those mistakes where I've for somehow felt that I'm better than everyone else they've seen, and I'm sure I can do it.
Hmm.
And, I failed on that front. So first is an open and honest conversation about what their goals is. Number two is understanding what their timelines are. And number three is coming to terms with the fact whether you can deliver them or not. And if you can't, then you have to be honest with your patients and let them know that I can't do this in this time frame, but I can do X, Y, and Z. I think most people appreciate honesty. I've had patients that have come in, asking for, let's say, 20 units of Botox when they needed something like 50 or 60. I'm at a point in my career where I have no problems saying that, I'm sorry, I can't help you. I'd be doing you a disservice. And it doesn't make sense to do that. And invariably, they've all had injectors who gave them what they wanted for 20 units, yet they're sitting in your chair now, and you'd be amazed how many times they actually agreed to doing what you've recommended. So you have to be able to demonstrate expertise. You have to be able to kind of stand your ground, and you can't let the patient dictate what treatment you're going to do. They can certainly dictate what their goals are, but it's up to you to decide whether you can achieve them or not. Secondly, my favorite patient are the ones who want to go on a journey with me, you know, and that's to me, that's just a really good fit because I inherently doing a lot of different things at once, while it may generate a lot more revenue, is not how I work. I look at a patient and I look at them, what's our journey going to be like for the next 5 to 10 years or longer? And so I really approach my consultations. And so I have lots of devices and even a CO2 laser, which we perceive as this super badass, aggressive, ablative treatment. It's a tool. You can do a very light peel where the downtime may be 24 to 48 hours. So just have those conversations. I don't like pushing anything, and I like to take them on a journey. That to me is a patient that works well with me, and I try to relay them. And every time they come in, if I'm getting my Botox patients coming in, and I'll give one final example of what that actually looks like. It's towards the end of the summer or beginning of the summer, and I'll say, you know what? Your Botox is doing really well. You've done a fantastic job with the skincare, with the Botox. Why don't we plan on doing a laser-based treatment to really brighten up your skin? Now they come back at the end of the summer, and I'll read my notes on what I mentioned, and I'll bring it up again. Why don't we plan on doing this? That technique has worked for me so well. I'd say 70, 80% of the time, they're going to go with my recommendations because they fit well within my mode of really taking them on this journey. So, yeah.
It's well, Dr. Hardy, you just described exactly what we coach a model that we call it influential leadership. And the definition of influential leadership is an influential leader gives somebody something they don't even know they need or want, but once they have it, they can't imagine living without it, and then they can't wait to give it away. And not from a place of trying to make a profit but from a place of genuine care for, not just care of that person. And I think that's it. And you say it's a journey. I mean, you think how many people do you trust with putting needles in your face? I mean, when I just look at this, I mean, it's just such a gift you have, and that trust is such an incredibly fragile vessel. Uh, Overdoing anything or rushing through to add too many things too quickly is just like an orchestra out of control. It's not going to sound too good. No, I really appreciate that. You're that the resonance that you're carrying with that, Dr. Hardick, about just making sure that you've got patients first. I think that it just keeps coming back to that. Gina, we just one question here for you, and watching our time. From your experience working with both practices and investors, how can med spa owners balance adopting cutting-edge devices with ensuring profitability? And where do you see the biggest growth opportunities in device-based treatments, perhaps over the next few years?
Yeah. So, like Dr. Stoney just said, on the provider side, it really should be about what's best for the patient. And it's funny because then anytime an investor gets involved, that all goes out the window and it's dollars and cents and how does it look on paper. And so the healthiest practices, I think, kind of marry the two opposing sides here. Um, when I'm talking about like scalability, adding other devices, and when we make that decision, first, we need to look at utilization, right? A $200,000 device that's used once a week is a liability. That is not an asset. So we need to make sure a device is booked. My threshold is like 65, 70% of the time. And then for me, that signals, okay, we're using that device, it's being well received, we've rolled it out to our patient base, and they might be ready for something new, right? We also look at your providers. How are they booked out? What are our leading procedures? Are we 50, 55% toxin? Are we 10%, this, whatever, and make sure that all of our percentages are in line with the scope of the business and what percentage of the practice is coming from what. I think another way to add to your devices without having to buy a new one is, I'm going to scream it again, the regenerative add-ons, right? Adding something that costs you $50 or $100 is now changing that treatment and the outcome of that treatment, or becoming a little more bang for your buck, or you're able to go back through people who have already received it and need the cleanup for this year and offer them something new. And sometimes that's all it is. We want something new and exciting and shiny to sell to our patients, and patients want that too sometimes. So we don't always have to blow it out of the water and buy $150,000 or $250,000 laser to introduce new things within the practice. The metrics that you really need to look at, and what I advise when pairing private equity with some of my practices that either want to sell or scale, we look at EBITDA, right? We look at gross profit margin. We look at revenue per hour per room. We look at rebooking rate and memberships. They want to know how much money is coming in consistently in the month that's not tied to an individual provider. And the more you can make that money come in because of a device, because of a membership, and not because of a person, that is more scalable to a venture capital or private equity, company. So I would say they're going to look at really tightening up all of your profit minus your expenses and making sure that you're at an appropriate rate. So if you are overloading and loaded in things like devices or leases, that is going to be a red flag for anybody coming in to help you scale. It's also going to be really hard to get financed. Financing for these devices is not easy right now either. So a lot goes into that, but making sure you're not overextended, utilizing your devices, and your profitability's there is a good starting point.
Excellent. Thank you, Gina. I think, it's another very different world. It's almost, we could do an entire webinar just on that. That's a whole other language, a whole other functional, but great introduction to it. Thank you very much. I'm just looking at our time, and I'm just going to have to shift gears here. And I'm just going to share my screen. I think you can see that now. And I just want to say thank you. Our time is coming together. This has been amazing. And I do want to just bring back what I said to you, that if you stayed around, and thank you, I see that you all did stay around for the to the end of the webinar as we come to the end here, that I promised a very interesting gift for you. And here it is. This is a gift that's actually from the founder of the Business of Aesthetics Expert Panel webinar. His name is Narain Arulraja. And Narain is also the CEO of Equa Marketing, and they are a digital marketing organization for doctors, medical professionals, and their teams and their practices, very much specific to aesthetics as well. So as a token of his appreciation for your time tonight, thank you so much for it, and participation, Narain is offering you what he is called a free marketing strategy meeting with Lila Stone. Lila is the Business of Aesthetics Marketing Director for Equa Marketing, And Lila, as you can see from her areas of specialty, has established herself as a trusted expert in digital marketing and is passionate about empowering medical professionals with the marketing tools and knowledge to stand out in a competitive market. And I want to just point out, this is not just about her doing a little bit of a conversation with you. She's actually going to invest about 5 or 6 hours into doing a kind of a digital forensic audit. What's going on with your online platform? What's not going on? What's missing? What's working? What's not working? Where could it be improved? And prepare a report for you that's custom to your practice and be able to give you an outline of things that you can consider doing to, as I said, actually increase people coming through your doors and converting those into new patients and increasing the sales by patient as well. So I just encourage you to go ahead. If you're not using your phone for the webinar, you can scan the code there. In the chat, there'll also be a hot link in there where you can book your session with Lila. It's also the link is on the screen in front of you. But I just want to print out 2 questions that I always print out with, because there's lots of offers and there's lots of things that come by our way. And the 2 questions I have, the first question is, what's at risk for me to reach out and book this session? Well, I can tell you that the real risk is your time. And I know it's super valuable and we appreciate it, but there's no hidden cost. There's no tricks or the trade in behind. There's just simply Narang offering this as an opportunity to help you strengthen something that may not be in your wheelhouse. The second question is probably the one that's more relevant, and it's what's at risk if I don't? So I can't answer that for you. You can only answer that for yourself. But I do encourage you to think about this. Spend an hour with Lila. I guarantee you'll be more than satisfied in what comes out of that. But having said that, I'm going to shift to our closing slide and saying thank you, first of all, to Gina and Dr. Hardick. So much insight, best practices, and oh my goodness, actionable content. You guys were rock stars tonight. Thank you so much. Collectively, you've made the complex simple, the hidden very visible, and I think the difficult easier. And thank you for doing that. Secondly, thank you to all our attendees for the privilege of your time. And we also want to remind you that without you, we don't grow together. And when we don't grow together, we can't set each other up for success. So thank you for being part of this process with us. Also, a reminder to like, share, and review us on your social media platform. We love reviews, and so should you, and be part of someone else's success. So having said all that, and until next time, please keep striving for excellence and exceptional, and I'm going to add a word, exceptional patient-first care. And thank you again to our panelists tonight. Mike Walker, till next time. Thanks.